In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Brian Fry, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbartis, Lizzie Haynes, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome all you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. Welcome to the show where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Russell Guest, and joining me today is my good friend and co-host, Mr. Brian Fry from the Lilac City in Spokane, Washington. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Good evening, folks. Thanks for joining us tonight.
And coming to you from the Lone Star State, from deep in the heart of Texas, Dallas, Texas, returning for a second time. You heard him on the Bullet episode. It's your special guest, Mr. Chris Shreve. How you doing, sir?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Well, we got a fifth element in this movie today, so let's break the ice and ask ourselves, what is your favorite fifth movie in a franchise or series of movies? Chris?
My favorite, and it was an easy choice for me, was Fast Five, the fifth installment of the Fast and the Furious series. It still has the cars, has only a little taste of the crazy, that comes in later. Just my favorite overall of the entire series. So, yeah, Fast Five.
Brian, how about you? What's your favorite fifth movie?
I went with X-Men First Class here. I also think it's the best in the X-Men Greater Mutant film years.
That's a good pick. My favorite's probably going to be You Only Live Twice. It's it involves James Bond, Sean Connery dressing up in full-blown yellow face and impersonating an Asian person, and there's definitely some cultural things that might not be viewed as sensitive today. You'd have to give it one of those Disney Plus warnings of, some of these things in this movie might need to have a discussion today about. So, but it's also still a really fun movie, and I really enjoy it still. So,
just racist.
It's fun. Just a hint of racist.
Just a hint of racist.
You got Donald Pleasance as Blofeld. You got the volcano layer there. Tiger Tanaka's awesome. I have fun with this movie. So
I'll admit, I really enjoy that one too. So I was giving you a hard time to give you a hard time, but it is, it's Bond.
It is. And what is the last movie you saw, Chris?
Yeah, the last movie I saw was actually this past weekend. I snuck out to go see John Wick 4, which is a lot of fun, a lot of crazy action. It's definitely, if you can call something becoming Fast and the Furious-ized, it's a little bit crazy. There's really good action cinematography in there. Awesome single take of a shootout in an abandoned building from above as John Wick works his way through. It's a really, really cool movie.
He keeps going. He's now surpassed Liam Neeson for Taken movies. So with John Wick's movies. So has he become the quintessential revenge guy?
Could be. I'll tell you what. The number of nut shots in the movie are just insane. They just keep leveling that up every movie, and they don't stop on this one.
I know that they've already greenlit a John Wick 5, but it's called The Ballerina.
Maybe, if it's not another man as a protagonist, then maybe the nut shots just continue to rise.
It gets far worse than just a nut shot.
Brian, hopefully something more comfortable just to even mention. What is the last movie you saw?
I'm probably in danger of mentioning this in more than one podcast, but it is truly one of my favorite espionage movies. My last movie was Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy with Garriman.
My last movie that I actually saw two movies, and they split the same movie into two pieces, which I don't like doing. Hunger Games, Mockingjay, Part 1 and Part 2. Never saw it, never got around to it. Finally finished off the series. Netflix gave me one of those deadlines, like watch it before the end of the month, and I was like, I'll respond to your urgency. Don't split movies. Let's just start by saying that. This should have been one movie.
If you were sat down and had to watch every second of Mockingjay from end to end, Part 1 and Part 2, would that be more acceptable?
No, I really think Part 1 has a lot of superfluous stuff. I mean, we're talking beyond director's cut, so no, I just don't think.
Okay.
I just genuinely, lots of content I don't need. It didn't roll up my socks. My socks are not rolled up. So, but let's talk about a movie that does excite me. Today we are covering which movie, Chris?
We are covering The Fifth Element.
The Fifth Element stars Bruce Willis, Gary Oldman, Ian Holm, and I'm going to try and do better with this one because I've been mispronouncing her name for much of my life. So Mila Jovovich and Chris Tucker. It's released in 1997. It's budgeted for $90 million, which is a lot of money. It's the most expensive movie made in Europe, most expensive non-American movie made to date at this point when it was made. It grosses $63 million domestically, which that doesn't sound like a huge return, but globally it's $263.9 million. So it is a very good success. It places at 26th on the box office. It comes in just behind In and Out, which is not the kind of movie you might be thinking it would be with a title like that. And ahead of Mouse Hunt at 27. So the number one movie in 1997 was Titanic. And we have covered Titanic, so check out episode 103 for that. And IMDb gives The Fifth Element a 7.6. The critic score of Rotten Tomatoes gives it a 71%. The audience likes it a little bit more at 86%. It is an Academy Award nominee for Best Sound Editing. Does not win. And the BAFTAs also make it a winner for Best Visual Effects. It's a 3-time Caesar Award winner, which I was not as familiar with these, but it gets a Best Cinematography, Director, and Production Design for them. It is a Golden Raspberry nominee. The raspberries are the ones you don't want, the bad actors. So Worst Supporting Actress was given a nomination for Mila Jovovich and Worst New Star to Chris Tucker.
Boo.
That's awful. That's
Boo,
that's a bad
raspberries.
take. Yeah.
Boo. Shame on you.
Thank you, Brian and Chris,
Shame.
for saving me the trouble because these are bad nominations. So MTV Movie Award nominee for Best Fight, and it is a 4-time Saturn Award nominee, which this just seems like something a Saturn Awards would have loved. I don't know why it didn't win, but it got Best Science Fiction Film, Best Supporting Actress for Mila Jovovich. So, Best Costume.
I applaud you keep fighting the good fight, man. I'm with you. I've mispronounced her name my entire life, and this is an uphill struggle.
It is. If you have listened to the Ronin episode, I think it was, that Brian and Chad and Dustin all struggled with Jean Reno's name, and it was Jean Reno. I said I don't want to create a new Jean Reno in this episode. So, Chris, had you seen The Fifth Element before?
I have, but actually sitting down to watch this entire thing, I realized I've never owned the movie before this, and I don't think I'd ever seen the full movie. I watched it, and I had never seen the first 15 minutes of this thing. I think it's just one of those things where it came on TNT and I just started watching it right to the end, but I never saw the start.
That happens. That happens a lot with TNT movies too. I'm one of those people.
So, Chris, what's it like actually taking it in at one time?
I was surprised, right? I was like, "Holy!" There's some exposition up front that tells you what's going on, because every time before it's you just sort of get on this ride and it's like, all right, this is cool. There's these stones, whatever. I had never actually seen any of the beginning part. Had no idea that there was some sort of I don't want to get into the plot before we go to spoilers, but yeah, it was enjoyable.
Now, Brian, how about you? Had you seen The Fifth Element before?
I think there was a point in time in my life I would have called this guilty pleasure, but now it's just, nope, I love this movie. Everybody can deal with it. This movie's awesome.
Yeah, this is not a guilty pleasure for me either. This is a pleasurable pleasure. So I take it you saw this and it's holding up well for you.
I have to think that I saw this in theaters. It's definitely my type of movie. It's my type of cast. It's an incredible fun film. I cannot tell you accurately the first time or where I saw it, but I would think that this is something I went out of my way to see in theater.
And I did not get this at the time when it came out in 97. I had this weird thing of I think Bruce Willis is overrated. Why? Because I'm 13 and I don't know anything about movies at the time. I just hadn't seen Die Hard and I just hadn't seen the right movies. And so, when this came out, I was like, I don't need that. And a couple people mentioned it was good, but then my wife, or my girlfriend at the time, Mary, she put this one in front of me and said, this is fun. And we watched it in college in my freshman year, and I had a blast with this thing. I watched it I had consecutive roommates in 3 years in a row who just loved this movie. This movie was on. This is a college movie for me, which is ironic because it's probably maybe even 6, 7, 8 years after it came out. I got to it late. It held up for me, though. It's a good sign when it holds up to you when you get to it late. That means it's holding up well, and I think it's holding up incredibly well, unless you just don't like fun. We're going to spoil this movie and get right into it, so we will be back after these messages.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies Podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason. And this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we're finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments, too.
It's the All 80s Movies Podcast, now available on all major streaming platforms. Please subscribe and happy listening.
All right, this is your final warning. There will be spoilers that lie ahead. Now, Brian, for those who haven't seen The Fifth Element since 1997, or for people who have only seen bits and pieces of it on TNT, do you want to refresh people's memories?
So it's the 23rd century.
And the galaxy is threatened evil. Not an evil, just
Evil.
and it comes in the guise of an amorphous planetoid fireball that eats missiles and swallows ships on its way to destroy Earth. Our only hope is a weapon
Consisting of
4 stones that align around a supreme being with element to stop it. After
an attack on the
supreme being shipped by the henchmen of the galaxy tycoon
Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg,
the remnants of the supreme being are reconstituted by the military in order to ascertain where the stones are. Escapes their custody to fall quite literally into the hands of ex-Special Forces Commando Corbin Dallas, who, after meeting her, has his world flipped upside down. He is re-enlisted by the military to commission to recover the stones while protecting her or being protected by Lilu, the element herself. After retrieving the stones and teaming with radio host and all-around
ridiculous person Ruby Rod,
bringing them back to Earth. There, Lilu needs a reason to stop all the death and suffering, prompting Corbin to pronounce his love for her and saving the universe.
Wow. Well done, well done. So, Chris, Fifth Element, there's not a lot of movies like this, are there?
No, the closest thing I could think of that's sort of similar, just in sort of shape, is like Starship Troopers, right? Where it's just a campy sci-fi romp.
I was thinking Guardians of the Galaxy, but still, there are not a lot of these out there.
Yeah, it's just the whole winking at the audience that Starship Troopers does a little bit more, but yeah, it's a lot of fun.
But you're right. I think if you're going to compare like satire mixed with action the way this does, I do think you're right that Starship Troopers is the closest similar movie.
Yep.
What we have here, Luc Besson stated that The Fifth Element is not a big theme movie. It's not a thinker. It's got a lot to chew on. And although the themes was important, he wanted the viewers to reach the point where Lilo states, what's the point of saving one life when you see what you can do with it? And you kind of agree with her. But this movie I think this is a derogatory term sometimes for some movies, but it's a popcorn flick. It's just fun, isn't it?
No, it is. If I had one sort of, I don't know that for a popcorn flick, it does try to get a little bit preachy on, war is bad and love solves all problems at the end. And it doesn't really fit, I don't think, as much. But, if you just kind of it's just fun,
It's awfully late when they even introduce that into there, too. Like, you're on the way out at that point.
Yeah.
Brian, we have the same bad guy from Green Lantern. Why does it work here?
I really think with this movie, I agree that it can be watched as that popcorn flick, but I think that if you do look a little deeper than just the flamboyancy of the film, this is a richly made popcorn film. Just from the effort that both the cast and crew made to make it real, like with the language that Lilu speaks is something they actually could for the film. I do think that there is some very good underlying principles in this film that are brought up, and it almost becomes more of an Easter egg film that if you understand, some aspects of religion, politics, economics, and that sort of thing, I think more you can get out of this if you're paying attention. But if you're not, you still can enjoy it for also what it is.
Yeah, I think this is a refreshing movie. Am I wrong in saying science fiction movies at this point in time are not optimistic? They tend to be dark, post-apocalyptic. In a post-Blade Runner world, and certainly by this point, Most futures don't look like places you'd really want to live. That's not the case for The Fifth Element, is it?
No, it's not. Actually, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is just the wide opening up to this version of New York that just is it's actually bright, right? And sure, they get down into the fog in the beginning, which again was not part of the original experience that I had watching the movie because I never caught that part before. But it's generally just things are good, and it doesn't have like the government, right? The government, the president and the whole government, they're not the primary antagonist. It's not some sort of fascist group that they're opposing them, right? I don't know. It does have sort of a lighter tone to it.
Sure.
That's one of the things that sets it aside, I think. It's interesting. This refreshing direction has come from the mind of a teenager, basically. Luc Besson starts writing this at a very young age and continues to write on it throughout years and years of work. And maybe it's the teenage boy in me still to this day, but I'm sitting there going like, this is so many things of what I like. It is funny. It is exciting. It is also, like you said, Chris, it's creating an interesting world. Like it's world building. This thing was going to be a trilogy. And I got to say, Besson had to condense it all into one movie, but I was left seriously wanting more. I wanted a sixth and seventh element to come in sequels, personally.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that it was originally targeted as a trilogy.
I would have been game. I mean, I usually am. I would have loved to have seen how this could have been longer.
But at the same time,
this you get it the other way around. You get a trilogy and you're like, wow, you very succinctly made this into one film. So looking at the other direction, it's interesting because I'm like, man, they did a really good job of not making any of this feel really rushed. So I'm curious what could have been in there.
Yeah, I just got done saying that The Hunger Games, last movie that I saw, Part 1 and Part 2 Mockingjay, don't do that. Don't split the last movie. So this is, like you said, this is the opposite. It is hard to argue with the results here for me. So maybe my leave them wanting more is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I was actually thinking if this was made today and had the sort of commercial success that it did, it would certainly have sequels, right? We would have gotten the sixth and seventh elements, and maybe even we got into another, by the time we get back to the fifth sequel, who knows, we get back to the fifth element. But
yeah, and maybe a prequel to throw in there too, as they like to do. Just when they lose their like when they lose their momentum and they say, "Ooh, we've extracted this well," and they're like, "No, we haven't." What do you mean? Prequel, baby.
Yeah. Now we need a grimdark Corbin Dallas.
It would have to go like this: be fifth element, sixth element, seventh element, eighth element, second fifth element.
What about four? That's what I mean, like fourth element.
No, but it's gotta make fun of itself a little bit. So you gotta go with the second fifth element.
Yeah. Well, the prequel though is clearly going to be the Special Forces history of Corbin Dallas, right?
Oh, it has to.
I just think that one of the things that we've also got here is we have this hero. It's interesting. He and the main villain, they'd ever meet. They don't end up in a traditional face-off. There's no main. Corbin and Zorg don't really even directly communicate with each other. I mean, Zorg has the company who actually ends up laying Corbin off as a cab driver, which kind of pushes him back into his special forces past. But this is unconventional on so many levels. And again, the role of the baddie and the goodie and how they debatably move in parallel with each other. Do you like this, Chris?
Oh no, I loved it. That's actually one of the notes I had is that there's no fist fight between Bruce Willis and Gary Oldman, right? That would have to happen, right? And does in so many of these archetypal movies, right? It has to come down to a fist fight between the two of them. And here we just have them, following their paths, and the antagonist is defeated and the protagonist wins, but they never actually see each other. Yeah, I love it.
It's incredibly unique. And I think there's all these moving pieces too. You have the aliens who are trying to protect us. You have the alien race who's kind of your baddies who are like mercenary types. You have Zorg. I do think he gives a whole spiel about creative destruction and wanting to destroy. I don't know that I buy it. I at times do sit there and say, if you really dive into it, like you said, Chris, if you pick it apart, I'm not sure his motives are solid, but this is the movie where it's fun enough where you don't really ask yourself to stop and pick that apart. So
yeah, you're just here to have fun. The whole, it's the broken windows economic theory. It doesn't really work, and we've known that for a couple hundred years now, and I figure they'd know that 300 years from now, but it's fine. It's just fun.
I remember hearing that even upon the first viewing, sitting there going like, That doesn't sound right. I mean, because if you just don't break stuff, then you have all your resources from everybody else to do something else with. And I don't think this guy knows what he's talking about. Who does his hair anyway? So I kept needing an explanation for what that plastic thing is.
Yes.
Guys, so, this is 23rd century Stark.
I don't know if I give him that much credit. I think maybe he's put into his place by the shadow
Is he-
evil.
No. I'm saying like he's the gun maker. Like he's a weapon. He's at least what's a hammer guy's name? He's got hammer tech.
Yeah, he's Hammer Tech. I'll give you. Yeah, he's Hammer Tech. I think he's been elevated by a deal with the devil, as it were. He made a deal with the Fire Planet, and somehow that's benefited him. Clearly, he owes him.
It was a pretty cool gun.
It was.
Oh
cool.
yeah, the gun was cool.
Yeah, I would definitely enjoy. I'm not a gun guy, but that just looked. You put that many gadgets in anything, I'm gonna be interested.
Just don't touch the red button.
I thought if there's one thing that should be very universally known across species of aliens, you never touch the red button, man. Red button. Like I feel like that's duh.
This movie has another good button scene early on too, when the inept mugger is coming to Bruce Willis's door and he doesn't know the safety's on, and he's just nervous.
Give me the cash.
Yeah, that guy is great, by the way.
Give me the cash.
Yeah, he's sitting there trembling. He's like, the safety's not on. You need to hit that yellow button. And like he's like testing him. He's like, go ahead, push that button for me. So
I don't think like I said, I'd never seen that scene before. I had a blast because I'd never seen. Like I'm pretty sure the first part I ever saw of this movie was Mila waking up in the test tube, which I don't know. Maybe there's a reason why that's when I started watching the movie, but I don't remember anything before that. So.
I was going to say, that's the scene where you sit down. I will be finishing this movie now. So,
can we talk about how the thermal bandages work?
I don't think they don't. I think
they're working for me. That's all I'm saying.
No, I'm just saying. Like I remember thinking it early on watching this movie, and it still exists today. I'm just like, they just shoot him kind of across her, and then all of a sudden they're a bodysuit,
and I'm like,
are they magnets? Like how? How?
Well, they 3D printed her, in 1997. So,
agreeably, that they just made a full human being from a hand. I get it.
It's a weird being.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to get hung up on with the thermal bandages. But it's like they said, shoot a blanket, but then the blanket became like a onesie, and I was like, how did that happen?
I don't know. It's just women's clothing, man. It's, some of the things that are horribly uncomfortable, like the high heel. Whoever invented that? Like, that is not ergonomic, but hey, it works. I mean, I don't know why it works. Like you said, basically taking duct tape almost and strapping it across your body. And hey, great movie piece of wardrobe. It's an iconic.
Yeah, I don't want to get dinged for sort of sexism here either, but I'm very pro flight attendants in the 23rd century too.
Yeah, Ruby Road, clearly the Me Too movement hadn't happened for Ruby. So.
Hey, he doesn't want one position.
He wants all positions.
Yes.
So I actually like the character of the Fifth Element. It's funny to watch her be a fish out of water. Well, that's where a lot of the humor in this movie comes from. I really enjoy watching her just interacting with this world and coming to see it as we do. I mean, some of it's just, hey, chicken, that's cool. But I mean, when she holds up the multipass, like, it's like, Liu das multipass, like with great pride, like I get to use the multipass.
Yes, she knows it's a multipass.
And Bruce Willis is, yeah, we know. So there's so many little things in here that are funny. Ian Holmes' portrayal of a monk, which is not, a venerable character, ends up being a source of humor. And this, I gotta say, one of the things that I love about this movie is it hits the balance of humor and action so well. I don't necessarily laugh out loud constantly, but I'm grinning.
Well, even the action is humorous, right? Yeah, it's not taking itself seriously in the action parts either. It's still funny.
You're right. I mean, I love the scene where Mila is fighting and beating up on this pack of these mercenary green aliens and stuff like that. She literally takes like a Three Stooge, like swipes back, like I mean, she doesn't like go like, oh, a wise guy, But like, there's another scene where she's got like another alien in her hand. She's about to hit him. She just pauses and she reaches behind her and punches somebody she can't possibly even see, and then punches forward. So on the back punch. So I mean, you're right, Chris. The choreography for the fights, it's very funny. In fact, I enjoyed it so much I could have dealt with it. Perhaps this is what I want more from the sequels. Like, I leave this movie, particularly after a rewatch, going, this only could have happened at the this little part of the 90s because science fiction movies changed directly from here. But even at the time, I think I texted Fry one day. I was like, where are the other movies like this? I needed more like this.
Yeah, it's the only thing that I can think of that's like it is the Starship Troopers, and it's still different in significant ways. It's more tongue-in-cheek, less direct humor.
I still believe that both movies do put a satirical view on large topics. It was much more targeted at government in Starship Troopers than it is in this. But this is a very small box genre.
I think one of the things that we all probably have to mention is it's a pretty weighty cast. I mean, it's interesting. We just mentioned Jean Reno. Jean Reno actually was an original choice to be Corbin Dallas. But I'm going to ask, where on the Bruce Willis ladder do you put this? I have this probably just under Die Hard as my second favorite Bruce Willis performance. Is that too much?
Pulp
yes.
Fiction. Probably above this for me. He doesn't have a huge role there, but
well, I guess if you're gonna go, let's go with leading role. Like, he was a lead for Pulp Fiction, but that could be about 9 people.
Yeah,
and you can pretty much ignore most of his cinematography after 2010.
Yeah.
So,
Looper's after that, right?
Gosh. I mean, Whole 9 Yards was excellent.
He's great in that. That's true.
I got to give hats off to Sixth Sense.
Yeah, so I was bringing Sixth Sense as another one.
That's good.
And he had a couple. I know you're not an 80s movie fan, Russ, but he had some 80s, early 90s action films like Last Boy Scout, and what was the one that happens in Pittsburgh with Sex and the City?
Striking Distance.
Yeah, Striking Distance. So I'm not going to put those above this. I'm just saying that he's had such an interesting career. Even Armageddon was a good movie. Say what you want about it. Bandits was hilarious. If you ever get a chance to see Bandits with Bob Thornton. So he's had. I would say that I wouldn't put this anywhere outside of his top 5.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Besson approached Bruce Willis and Mel Gibson for the leading roles. Now, Willis expressed interest pretty much right away, even though it was considered a risky move for him. And he's coming off of 2 movies that you didn't mention, Hudson Hawk, which actually I've seen previews for. This movie does look pretty interesting to me, and Billy Bathgate. Both were received poorly. They did not do well in the box office. So we've talked about this once or twice with another actor. So there's some points where the right actor just gets the right movie and it reinvigorates their career. And I think this is this for Bruce Willis because he needed a hit and he got one. And I'm just glad Mel Gibson turned it down because I don't think Mel Gibson can have fun like this. And I've seen him in Lethal Weapon, but there's fun in going around him. It's not Bruce Willis looks like he's having fun here. Like, he looks like he's got a smile kind of on his face as he's doing much of this stuff. And for me, that sets the mood so much throughout this. And I didn't have to be another Fifth Element movie, but he's really good with Chris Tucker also. Their dynamic is very good.
It is. And it's not something that I feel like should have worked. You know what I mean? Do you ever watch a duo and you're like, that shouldn't have worked? And it did. And that makes it even more impressive.
I agree. What are some casting moments here that stand out to you?
So we haven't talked at all about Chris Tucker's Ruby Road, but I mean, I love his performance in this movie. It is the highlight for me by far. And now looking back, I mean, it's modern day streamers, right? This is an Instagram person. Instead of the long microphone, it's a selfie stick walking around streaming their life, 2 hours every day. It's exactly what it is, and it's prescient and hilarious.
Yeah, that Razzie nomination is horrible.
I didn't know about it ahead of time, by the way.
I'm not sure if I've ever disagreed with a Razzie more than Chris Tucker in Fifth Element.
Yeah, that's awful.
He was nominated. He did not win. Thank goodness somebody came in. I don't know who it was. I didn't do all that. I didn't go that deep, but somebody beat him out for it. Thank goodness. So Willis was had very easily. He came to New York, he read the script, and in about 2 hours he said, I'll do it. That just seems very Bruce Willis to casually just be like, I'll do this awesome movie for you.
Yes.
So, perhaps more selectively, Mila Jovovich beat out 200 to 300 women who auditioned for the role of Lilu. Chris, why is she, as they kept saying over and over again, she's perfect?
I looked up a little bit after I watched the movie, and it said that she came in, and I think she just had fun with it. Maybe that's she didn't take herself too seriously. I saw that she learned the entire language of 400 words that of the, as they call it, the holy speak.
Well, she helped create it. So and they got to a point where she was fluent in it with the guy. I don't remember his position within the movie,
but with the guy
director.
who
with the guy who started it, that they were having full conversations in it by the movie. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about when I say this movie has depths that you just have to probe.
Yeah.
It becomes more Easter egg than it is a topical piece. And that's really blew me away about this, is once you really start reading into it and seeing some of the nuances to it you may not get just on a casual watch. That's what makes this truly excellent science fiction, because you have that in a lot of truly excellent fiction.
And I think she's well adept at doing that, because it's my understanding she's fluent in 4 different languages, real languages.
Yes.
And so when you have to create your own language, just being so skilled as speaking through all these different languages has just got to help you. I wouldn't have been shocked if you had told me this was some kind of tribal language that they had dug up and just used, but it felt legit. So, but it was also done, she's acting. Again, I think that I don't know how she could ever be called a bad actress on this one, because I think, again, she's doing things that are very funny. You don't understand anything she's saying for the first quarter of the movie, so you have to see what she's doing. I think the acting's really good because it's funny, but also you do kind of sympathize with her. Just she has to be, she's sad in the back of the cab. And I didn't realize it until I was watching this time. I thought she just was sad and said, please help. And I was like, oh, she's looking at a ad. She's tapping into, this will pull at his heartstrings. Please help. I was like, oh,
yes.
She's smart. This isn't even necessarily being pitiful. She just knows what she needs to do to get him to drive the cab for her, and it works. So, even with 1 point on his license,
I still am unclear on how the points work.
Oh yeah,
no,
that's also an excellent. And do you realize how many times Bruce Willis breaks something in this movie? He rips the little AI thing telling him about the points off his license. Then he's in his apartment when they're telling him about the thing, and he pulls the light off the wall. He's jacked. He's breaking real fixed on stuff a lot.
Well, he's a former special forces. He's basically a retired Jason Bourne who just wants to quit and drive his cab.
Drive a cab for a finger.
Which, by the way, Chris, I don't know if you got enough car action in this movie, but I found myself wanting to fly around in South Brooklyn in a level of Crazy Taxi, delivering people left and right all over this town.
Yes.
You got 8 crazy minutes.
Yes. I liked South Brooklyn so much, and I liked this notion of driving on all these different tiers with flying cars. I feel like George Lucas might have borrowed some of this for his Coruscant version when he later did this in the prequels.
The animatronics that they used for the alien masks were recycled for Phantom Menace.
Really?
Yeah. So did you guys, but since we're on cast real quick, did you guys see all of the little pieces about who the characters base their character off of?
No.
So Gary Oldman said that he played Zorg as a cross between Ross Perot and
Bugs Bunny.
That's hilarious, and that's pretty funny.
The second one was Ruby Rod was supposed to be a mixture between Prince and Michael Jackson.
I see that totally.
That tracks.
So yeah, but the Ross Perot and Bugs Bunny, I love Gary Oldman, I truly do. He's one of those people that I target in movies on purpose all the time, and I could see him saying that, and I'm just British, so it's you have to be somewhat familiar with Ross Perot and obviously Bugs Bunny to make that happen. But what a wonderful way to go about acting in a movie. What's your plan, Gary? Well, I'm thinking American politician meets Bugs Bunny. Oh, okay. Let's go.
When we covered True Romance, I remember Tony Scott asked him, like, I want you to do this, and like Gary Oldman just like, no, I'm not doing that. I've got something better for you. And like he came in with the dreadlocks and doing this like white Rasta kind of get up. So I think Gary's known for these big, bold decisions and putting things together in a way that's just magic. I am sad in seeing that Gary Oldman just said he was such a good friend of Luc Besson. He took this part without really reading the script. And in doing this movie, to repay him for, financing one of his other movies, Nil by the Mouth, which is a 97 movie as well. Then he was asked in an interview if he likes this movie. He says, "Oh no, I can't bear it." And, that's sad. He said it was singing for my supper because Luke had come in and partly financed my film. He doesn't love this performance here, and it crushes me because he's so good at it.
Well, I think I fall into one of those categories that you can. It's the Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think this is ridiculous, but I'm gonna sacrifice any of what makes me, and do less than than the movie deserves. So I think that you can love a movie that the actor didn't necessarily love, or love a performance that the actor didn't necessarily love, and it's still to their credit.
That's a very good comparison. We just covered that in our 200th episode. And you're right, Alec Guinness did make me sad by reading some of the things. It's like, but you're Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's awesome. So same thing, I would say, like Gary Oldman, I probably came to identify him as a name a little bit later. This is one of those movies that started to put him like on. I was like, oh, the guy who did that, and started to connect names. So Gary Oldman's awesome, but this is my top 5 Gary Oldman performances easily. It's just so distinct.
Oh yeah,
he has what it takes on this one. I gotta say, there's a slew of when we get to the Hidden Gem, it's really hard. This movie has tons of little really wonderful people that just get laughs and just nail all the small parts throughout this movie. We're talking 20th build actors might be contributing to stuff. I mean, like the grumpy cop who gets a Coke spilled in his lap. I mean, he gets a good laugh out of me. The guy, like, again, the guy's trying to mug Bruce Willis, the flight attendant who, is melting over Ruby Road. I mean, there's funny people throughout this whole movie. Like Chris talked about, the action's funny. Everybody is contributing, not everybody, but a lot of people are contributing to these like small moments of humor. They're all in on it.
I don't think anybody breaks away from it either. Like the tenor of the humor stays the same throughout the film. It's like someone didn't get the memo on what kind of movie they're making.
That's right. I guess the diva's not. She's got a death scene. That's all she's got to go off of. But
I don't know. I mean, she got to be present for the really, really like incapable security guard welcoming her in, and he's so stunned by how tall she is. He's like, and we need a tall.
That's another one of those great guys. Yeah, absolutely.
Presumably, you've done this once or twice, given that you're on a very high class spaceship, cruise ship. But nope, she's a squid-headed person. You're just like tall. Tall.
That's reminding me of the Deuce Bigelow character whose head is off the screen. That's a huge lady.
Yeah, that's not what I say.
Besson's writing this. I have to admit, he doesn't capture this magic again to me quite in his career again. I don't know how maybe The Professional, Leon the Professional is there for you, but Lucy and some of these other movies that he does, maybe this is just because he worked on this for years and years and years of his life to build up to this, but I don't think he ever captures this magic again. Do you?
No, I don't think so. I was looking through the list of other things he directed, and I've seen Lucy. I haven't seen a lot of these things, but Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets has been free on Prime for forever, and I still haven't watched it because it just looks.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. Yeah, don't watch it. Yeah, it's exactly.
He is truly a tale of two careers for me. Nikita, which was the movie that got me into further installments of that story arc, The Professional and The Messenger were all excellent, along with this one. But I mean, I literally have in my notes, it's like, oh, this guy did this and this, which were great, but recent trash, Valerian and Lucy.
Yeah.
So
There's a 6-year gap also. Like, he goes away for 6 years after he does The Messenger, which is another Mila Jovovich movie where she's the lead in that. But 6-year gap, that's unusual too.
Russell's determined to get it right by repetition. Like, I feel like Chris and I have like intentionally stepped back and let Russell say her name.
Yep.
Just so he could get his reps in.
Yep.
It's not easy.
You got to replace how many years? 37, 36 years of reps of the wrong way in one night.
It's true. I mean, before we hit record, we did a YouTube check, and I was like, I knew it. I knew I've not been saying this name correctly, and sure enough, I haven't been. So if all else fails, just be like, it's the pretty lady.
Orange.
Bruce Willis spoke favorably, in an interview. This was a fun movie to make, and it shows. Chris Tucker and Mila also spoke favorably about their experiences of making the movie and working with Besson. And it sounds like this was just a amazing situation. Mila clearly, again, worked with him in her next movie, and she said this is an first really amazing director I've worked with, which I've not gone back to check out the filmography on her exactly, but undoubtedly that's a slight to anybody you've worked with before. So it sounds like everybody's really clicking and working together here. And again, Oldman likes Besson too, even though he's not loving the role that he's in. The chemistry is showing through is what I'm getting at. Everybody looks like they're having fun. I think Ian Holm is having fun. I think Bruce Willis, those smiles are genuine. If you look at his later work, he could maybe be told that he could be sleepwalking through some of these roles a little bit.
I can see it.
This was a high budget movie. I also found it interesting how he was able to get so much finance to do this. It's not a Hollywood film. He got American actors, yes, but this is an ambitious movie. This thing is made overseas. It's kind of an anomaly for getting all this money to do all this with. Does it feel like these big expensive blockbusters? Because we talked about it looking a little bit different, but I sense that it spent its money differently somehow.
Yeah, well, there's clearly a lot of costuming, right? Really, really good costuming they spent on, and then there's some special effects, but that's not what the
bread and butter.
Yeah, it wasn't made to be a visually spectacular movie, right? The special effects are in support of the mood of the movie, right? So, even though maybe the alien costumes look a little bit ridiculous, that's part of the point, right?
I would agree with that. I think one of the things that's aging well is that it's CGI from 97, which is a dicey time for CGI. We even just pointed out like Star Wars. If you look at the Phantom Menace, it was huge advancement for CGI at the time. So anything prior to the Phantom Menace was rough, really rough. I gotta say, this movie didn't feel rough. And I think to some degree, Chris, what you're saying of it wasn't made to be real, where you like look at people rendered in polar expression, just like, this is weird. Just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
None of these people feel right. There's something fun about it. And it's not a full out cartoon, but it's one step towards that.
Yeah, I read that they actually used cartoonists to draw some of the backgrounds, which, makes sense, right? When you watch the movie. It's got a little bit of that lean towards it.
I only hope somebody from Futurama got involved because I would love that.
I don't remember if it was Joe or not, but I remember making a comment. Well, this is probably in the early 2000s after watching this at one point, and I said that being a big Blade Runner enthusiast, it's like watching Blade Runner with the lights on.
Yeah,
I feel like it's a more prosperous future than what we see in Blade Runner.
It's not quite as dystopian.
No, it's not dystopian.
Well, not quite. But you could see like an underlying grit to it. It's just people aren't quite so unhappy about it. Like everyone seems like I love the Chinese food guy.
He's good.
Yep.
One of my favorite parts of the movie. And he's like, your luck's gonna change. And he goes, I bet you lunch. And he's like, okay, you are fired. Like, just it's great. That was something that people just seemed happier about. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, negative things were happening. Bruce Willis had a profoundly terrible day at that night. So I'm completely behind him by going home ordering Chinese food because that's exactly what I would have done.
Brian loves Chinese food for the listeners.
Everything that happened in that. Now, I've never had a beautiful redheaded supreme being fall into my flying taxi cab before. But, I mean, he had a bad day. He got shot at a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like there's two
Comments I
can make on it. One, it's like watching Blade Runner with lights on, or it was after he took evasive action and dove
into the smog bank,
that they entered
the Blade Runner world.
Brian, you don't have to explain yourself. If a Blint boat just flew up to your house on your second floor of your house and you opened up the door and a warm-hearted chef made you fresh Chinese food and handed it to you and had a conversation with you, this just sounds like, this is Brian's Cloud 9.
It's true. If I had a good day, I would still do that.
Yeah.
I would still be game.
And good advice too. Don't forget the advice. Lunch and advice.
Yeah. Yep.
We should only hope
That we could have that with our service industry folks at that level. I hope they're still tipping. He should big tip for that.
He should. Most of the shots of Gary Oldman have a circle in or around his head in like kind of a halo type mode, whereas Bruce Willis, on the other hand, is framed by rectangular elements in the doorway. These are subtle things, but I like it when directors make decisions and do things like that. It really makes it rich when you start to watch it, I don't know, 17, 18, 19 times or whatever. I don't know what fraction of times you've watched on TNT before these things start to compound, but when a director makes a decision, that's a cool thing to do. And then the number 5 also pops up at a lot of points. Zorg stops the bomb with 5 seconds on it, and there are 5 elements, obviously, and Corbin Dallas has 5 points on his car. I mean, there's a lot of 5s in this movie, and numerology is not always my thing that I catch on to, but it's throughout this movie for sure.
It shows an attention to detail, like Brian was talking about before. Like if it's on the surface, just popcorn flick and fun, but there's just such a depth to it that you can dig into and have fun with too.
Do we need cyborgs in this world? I'm going to ask, because we have aliens and we have people, and some of the policemen like have robotic elements on their suits and stuff like that. But do we need droids? Not just sweeping up droids, but like...
I was like, yeah, we had the cleanup droids.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Like, do we need C-3PO and like walking around talking to people? Droids.
I kind of want to know what the little mini elephant thing was.
It was cute, but also very ineffective when you're choking on something. That was excellent, rubbing salt on the wound of being like, that won't help you.
Russ, I tell you, man, if I were choking right now and I was looking at a dog for help, he would not do much for me either. He'd come up and lick my face a couple times and go back to sleep.
I really like it when the, a lot of trouble could have been saved had the priest not knocked the peanut out of his mouth.
Sure.
But he did just get done with the spiel of like, I'm trying to save life and you're trying to destroy it. So it is very much in tune with what they're doing right there. He's willing to even save his enemy. There's compassion there, that was a great moment between the two of them after he gave his bad economic spiel. So,
well, maybe that's what the movie or what the franchise needed wasn't a prequel to Corbin Dallas, but call it like Bad Priest. And it's just the ups and downs of Ian Holmes' career as a priest that led to that point where they're like, we can't actually let you. I tell you what, we're going to give you this archaic key and for some questionable prophecy about 5,000 years evil returning. You can do that, but please don't speak to anyone.
I gotta say, the prophet from back in like the Luke Perry Egypt like excavation days is way better. Like he's cool under pressure. Like he's like trying to be like, sedate them with the drink. Which I first time I watched, I thought I was trying to poison them, but now I'm like, he's not going to kill him. He just wants to make them unaware of what's going on. And that guy is dealing with a much higher pressure situation at the moment, and he's cool under pressure. And Ian Holmes kind of nervous, and then I noticed David, the next in line's even more anxious and like, super nervous and and paralyzed by his own fears, and you can almost read it on his face like, I didn't sign up for this. I just wanted to do record keeping.
I 100% think he was to kill him.
He was trying to kill. He does kill him at the end, doesn't he?
No, the monk in the beginning. I don't think so. This order seems too committed to not destroying life. I don't think so. I think that was going to just knock him out to sleep.
Yeah, but if it knocked him out, they'd pick up with their work where they left off.
Well, he just needed them to go to sleep while the aliens came in and did their thing. So if they kept digging and stuff
right,
like that.
Right, But he was trying to knock him out before he didn't know the aliens were going to show up.
I would think that he would. They've been waiting 5,000 years for this. He must know that they were coming.
Well, they came early.
Came just to get the stones. He had no idea they were going to be there.
You're making me look at this a little bit differently, Fry. But okay,
100%. I think he's trying to kill him.
Bad Monk. There's your prequel.
Yeah, Bad Monk. I'm telling you, Bad Monk.
Again, let's talk about some of the more special effects here. What are some of the other things and the little rich things that you did? Obviously, there's a lot of gunfighting in this movie, and there's explosions, and there's different wild sets. They made some big, bold decisions with the sets. Chris, they spent a ton of money here. What are some of the things that it really paid high dividends for you?
It's the sets for me, right? It's you hit it right on the nail there. You know, the spaceship, the sets in the spaceships, the Zorg tower, right? Even just the apartment, right? The endlessly reconfigurable apartment. All the locations are really rich and imaginative, right? They're not just and I don't want to bag on Star Wars, but just metal walls with whoosh doors, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. I mean, you can get a lot of mileage out of those for me, but yes, you're right. The monk's apartment was really actually very cool. I don't know if it was an apartment or a monastery.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Ah, chicken.
Weddings are the next floor down. She's not my bride.
Yeah. Well, no, just the idea that there's this apartment building somewhere. It's like, all right, so relationship advice is floor A. We've got weddings on 4E. We've just
baptisms on 9. Yeah.
See, that's what makes me think that they kind of shunted him to this like kind of side thing. It's like, we don't need you talking to people about anything.
It's kind of like how the X-Files, they're trying to take Mulder and like shove him in the basement, thinking they're giving him insignificant cases, but he's actually doing something important.
Right. Exactly. That's a great segue for that. Yes. 100%.
The tenor of this movie is a little bit different than X-Files, but yes, I see what you're doing. They're moldering him.
Hey, listen, X-Files at least was good for one episode per season. It was silly and hilarious.
True. And hey, we have our redheaded companion who's highly capable and very good to walk through. This is X-Files right there. You've just discovered it. Way to go. We never noticed it.
And the tents.
Well, I did a quick look,
and outside of a whole bunch of one episode V rolls, Leeloo Dow only had Cuffs and Chapman, besides a part in Dazed and Confused before Fifth Element.
Ooh, now that's not a bad movie. That's interesting.
I don't know what her part in that was. Like, what, you know.
I remember it. I mean, now I had already seen Fifth Element, so she was on my radar. Had I seen it first, I might not have been like, hey, there's that person. On the other hand, she's pretty striking.
If you look at the movies she's really gone on after Fifth Element with, you know, the likes of Resident Evil franchise, Ultraviolet, For Kind, Stone, Three Musketeers, which was god awful.
Let's strike that one from her record.
But I'm just saying, look at where, like, Hellboy, like, she likes this kind of thing. Like, she does not have another Dazed and Confused-esque.
Zoolander?
Well,
Yeah,
Zoolander.
She's great. And she's really good in Zoolander. I actually want to say, that's what I was going to say, though, Brian. She's fun at, like, being funny. She should have done it more, because when she's just being, like, a total, you know, bad chick, kind of, you know, like kicking butt.
I love the
she does it well. There's no doubt about that. But I want to say, some of those action movies, some of those 12 Resident Evil movies, at some point, don't they become disposable at some point? And I think one of the things that we like so much on here is like how, again, it's this fish out of water thing. It's really fun to watch her do.
I'm like counting right now, trying to figure out what the 5th Resident Evil movie
was.
That's
exactly. I was like, none of us named that as a favorite one. So,
well, no, I was serious because it's true. I've never not enjoyed a Resident Evil movie. Like, you can say what you want about quality, but I've never been like, oh, this is where it went left on.
Okay, well, that's that. Well, if we're gauging off of that scale, then there's a lot of movies in this world that are really amazing movies. Then.
I like to put symmetry into our programming where we continuously harp on like the same couple things. So
Well, hey, here's a 007 callback. This is filmed at Pinewood Studios where they do the 007 filming, and this has the largest indoor explosion ever done, and they had a hard time putting the fire out when they blew it up. And if you're not familiar with this is in the movie where Corbin throws a bomb up on the underside of the ledge, and a large bomb goes off on a balcony in kind of this, ritzy symphony hall inside the cruise liner. I gotta say, I wouldn't have necessarily thought to myself that's the biggest indoor explosion. I would actually say it's had the opposite effect. I just said, oh, more things are being blown up outside that look inside than I realized.
I guess they actually blew up the set, right?
I have seen some clips of behind the scenes with them trying to put it out. It did look like it was getting out of control. I love it when that like semi-celebrity guy that they point out or whatever, like the guy with the really like Mozart wig kind of thing, the burned out guy's like, slide me the gun.
Yeah.
And he just rolls him some balls. So he's like, thanks.
who was that? It was what was? Did they say it was a football player or maybe that's somebody else they were introducing beforehand?
I don't know. Male Paris Hilton of the day. I don't know. He's famous, but I don't know why.
The only line I really remember from there is nothing more sinister than ministers.
We were talking about hair. Mila Jovovich's hair is really, really orange, and then she actually dyed it. But unfortunately, her hair was becoming so damaged and brittle and kind of falling apart. Unfortunately, they ended up switching to a brightly colored wig. And I sometimes have, I have the keenest wigdar, but I do tend to notice this sometimes. I don't notice it here as much. I can't tell when the wig is inserted into things. If you have goals to turn your hair this color, it will damage your hair, apparently, if you want to keep it vibrant and orange and not looking all faded out. Cautionary tale.
I do feel that like The Weeknd and maybe 6 people in the NBA have to thank Ruby Rod for this hairstyle.
Man, can we talk about Ruby's wardrobe? Everything he wears is wild, man. It's like androgynous. It's like skin tight, like the leopard print, like, I don't know. There's like this opera dress almost that he's wearing for lack of a better word, with like roses all over it. The more preposterous it is, the better it gets with him, because Chris Tucker is just so exaggerated. I feel like the wardrobe people must have had a fun time dealing with his long, skinny frame and just having a great time. Just, you can't go big enough with Chris Tucker. You can't, no matter what you put on him.
I think that would truly be one of the most fun parts to play in a movie.
If someone
Just came up to me and said, I want you to be the most ridiculous person you can be in this film, that's taking the cuffs off. It's like, let's go. Let's see where we can go with this. Let's see if we can take this part. And I think that's what made the Razzie nod so egregious to me, is you could tell that it was a very targeted absurdity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and under that, like, that's acceptable. That's not someone overplaying a part. That's someone being directed at being crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's a male diva.
Yeah.
What an amazing dismissal.
What kind of green?
That's not green.
Super green?
Chris, I like the Mangalores a lot. You mentioned some of the wardrobe and like makeup moments in this. Other than Gary Oldman's plastic helmet, is there anything that's not aging well on this one? And I'm sorry, I just get stuck on that plastic thing. I just don't know. It's never explained what it is. Nobody else has them. I'm confused. Very confused with that.
It's a fashion choice. I mean, I'm down with the plastic. I think that ages just fine. You know, I could see that being a thing. I don't know. I mean, in terms of the wardrobe not aging well, I love it. I don't know. It's like I said, you could criticize for some of the things for not looking quite right or looking kind of stiff, right, in the Alien thing, but that's just the movie that it is, right? No, it's not intended to. I mean, Jar Jar Binks looks really fluid, right? Is that a good alien costume? I guess, but
It probably would have been better had it been a costume.
I'll take the Mangalores.
The Mangalores look good because they're costumes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They used goggles to make them more cheap, dealing with all their eyes and stuff like that when the adhesive around them was difficult. So even the face shift, like where he's like, that face doesn't suit you. And like the CGI head shape, like it's really animated. It works for me. And I love it when people keep walking up to the booth and keep saying they're Corbin Dallas. So David
Corbin
Yeah,
Dallas.
I am Corbin Dallas.
Yeah, so 4 people come up in the course of 10 minutes saying they're Corbin Dallas. And I love the alien couple who are shapeshifted to try and fake their way in. Like the guy looks like he's getting ill at holding his shape.
Yeah.
The final guy goes up and he bangs the thing and the guns come down. It's like I was just waiting for the siren to go off. It says angry black man.
But he's so smooth. And
I love the part though with Gary Oldman where he says, "Why earn
Not. What an ugly face.
take it off.
Never be ashamed.
You are." He almost has like a southern gentility thing going on that I don't quite understand either. And it's such a it's such a persona that it works so well.
yeah. And hey, we've talked about this before. 85 workers, 5 months to build the models used for this movie. There are a ton of miniatures still being used at this point in movie history. That's about to leave, and they're blending in the CGI with it. And that mixing, we saw this in Jurassic Park. This works well. Instead of just saying, here's CGI, here it is in 1997, and you're like, ugh.
It all looks matte and flat.
Yeah. They're mixing techniques between the practical and the CGI. And at this point in history, that's 100% the way to do that. I'm aware that you can fully computerize it now. But we're just entering the transitional time in the 90s where I really appreciate that they had held on to that. Because the movies that aren't, or the movies that are, I hate to say this, the movies that think that they're being ambitious and going forward are the ones that I think hold great regrets. I'm looking at you, Blade, too.
I can see that.
Even the windows have reflections in the cars and stuff like that. And that was really difficult, like the bending reflections of everything like that. So they even put cute little license plates on there that were never visible in the movie. There was like a slogan on the license plates, and it says, New York, the FU state.
Yeah. At least they can be honest in the 23rd century.
I just got a shout out to Nick Dudman. He had a team of 55 workers to create new creatures for the movie. They're awesome. The makeup department that they did this is just so great. So he's an Academy Award winner. He did makeup for Joker, Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace, The Mummy, Mummy Returns, Batman Begins. This guy makes everything he touches just great. It's really cool to see. He trained under Stuart Freeborn, who did Empire Strikes Back. He was a trainee working on Jedi Master Yoda and, doing stuff from the get-go. So Nick Dudman, these are names you don't think about often, but he's a big force in this world that everything has been created here, and the long spindly nose garbage collectors and all that stuff that come out, like you talked about, like the little weird creature that comes up when he's choking. And it's great stuff. I have too many superlatives to give away, so I just have to call them out here in the special effects because there's too much other good stuff to call out. Music, Chris, what do you think about the funky music that we've got here?
Well, one of the most memorable things about this movie for me was the opera scene, right, with the singer and the choreography, right, to the fight. Yeah, I really enjoyed that part of the music, and then it doesn't come out a lot. Like it's not like the music's not out in front. I noticed when I was watching it, but it definitely, again, the whole movie is built towards this just fun, campy romp.
Agreed.
The diva actress is Luc Besson's fiance at the time, when the other actress who was going to play not the singing portion of it, but just the the physical actor in the suit, May Wynn is her name, and so she's lip syncing all of this. But there's an actual soprano, Enva Mula, who's actually singing this, but they then take it, they digitize it because no human voice can change notes that fast. What a cool thing to do for an alien, to give them range and ability that we don't have, and to digitize that.
Well, yes, squid person.
Yeah.
Squid person. But was the
Squid
voice
person.
because they're a squid person or because they've got a bunch of rocks in their stomach?
That's a fair point, Chris. Who knows what you can do when you have 4 12-inch by, what, you think 3 by 3?
Yeah.
4 of them in your
that's why she's
stomach,
tall.
and
They had
you're
Yeah, man, this must have been stacked end on end.
because I don't see that fitting in a stomach.
That's a good point. But there's some interesting YouTube attempts to recreate this. And there's some very impressive singers who give it their own shot. It's a fun thing to look up. So people replicating the diva song. I gotta say, the rest of the music's pretty fun. There's a chase scene while Bruce Willis is trying to evade the cops, and they kind of take this, I believe it's Indian or Arabic kind of music, and something about it is foreign enough to my ears where it feels like this is of the future. There's a levity that's given through some of the other walking around more score type moments and stuff like that. Again, every way you go through this, they made sure you were having fun, and the music is the same as well for me. I don't know if you agree with that, Brian.
No, it's definitely interesting. It's fun. It's different and it's multicultural, and I think that blend in to make it a very
Universal sound.
to make you feel like it's a multi-planetary vibe. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Why don't you say we hand out some superlatives?
Let's go.
Chris, who's your MVP of The Fifth Element?
It's Bruce Willis. I think he just struck the absolute perfect balance between comedy and playing it straight through the movie, and the exasperated special forces thing in a sci-fi romp. So I really enjoyed his performance here.
But it was terrible.
I think you can.
What is this? What is it? It's not green.
Yeah. Well,
Act like you have more one-word vocabulary.
yeah. But you can see that the movie's supposed to be fun and light and enjoyable, right? So you could play that role too dour, right, and just sort of ruin that vibe. Or you could buy into the camp too much, and you'd sort of, it wouldn't be, I don't know. It wouldn't be as believable is the wrong word, but it wouldn't fit as well.
Oh, yeah, they said they wanted Jean Reno first or Mel Gibson. I can't imagine either one of these being in here, so I agree with you.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Maybe if you get somebody with some humor, maybe more like Will Smith. I don't know, something like that. That's what it takes.
I don't know. I feel like it'd be Will Smith. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Bruce Willis has a gift to be funny and tough. Not everybody possesses that. There are very few who have that good balance, and he's pretty good at both. He actually has said before, I'm not a good actor. I just kind of show up and I play who I am on screen. You're too humble, Bruce. I think you're very good at what you do, because there aren't many people who have that balance to what he does.
And I do think, like, you could draw some similarities, but there are differences between a diehard Bruce Willis and this Willis. Like, they're yes, you're still being that
Tough guy.
but
The humor in one and
the humor in this are very different, and it's different. So you could say maybe pie chart isn't as broad as some others are, but I wouldn't pigeonhole you either.
Yeah. Brian, MVP?
Oh goodness, so many people to choose from in this one.
my
MVP for this is the
feeling of
grim flamboyance.
So the vibe, the feel, the world we're in, okay?
Yep. So the entire time you're in impending danger of universal destruction, and you're having a great time. So grim flamboyance.
Okay, so whoever the art director is for the set design and all that good stuff. So yeah, or possibly Bassan.
I think it took every single person involved with this vibe to exist. I can show you, and this goes back into what we were talking, where everybody was on board. Everyone got the mess correctly. I can tell you, as someone who manages
people,
how often or almost entirely not everyone gets the message correctly. Everyone was on board here, and that is a very difficult thing to do.
I'm going to go with Luc Besson, because everything is so good, like you said, Brian. So you've hired all the right people, you've overseen them right, you've communicated this way, and there's a singularity in the vision that's working, and the cast clearly likes working with him. I think in terms of him, like you said, I don't know why his amazing talents don't continue to shine through later in his career, but he's got it here. And you might have only cranked out, one great album or two great albums, but you know what? Not everybody hits one that good. So I'm going to go to Luc Besson on this one, because he is in high form here, and it's all working for me. Best supporting, Chris.
For me, is Gary Oldman's role as Zorg. I just love the performance. It was tough. There's a lot of different options, right? It's like, well, you got Lilu, right? Mila and Lilu would be a good candidate, but I just like how much he camped it up with the bad guy in this, with the delivery of the lines on the economics and the choking scene, and it's just great.
How good is that when he opens the box and there are no stones in there?
Twice.
Not 1, 2, not 3, but 4. 4 stones. You count, right?
I like the one where he just opens it up and starts laughing and you think he has
Yes.
them and then it turns into a cry. It's so good. It's hard to even replicate because he's doing it so well. Brian, best supporting.
I went with Tucker on this one. I love me some
Gary Oldman.
It's true, but I'm going with aspects of this movie that were so irreplaceable. Like, can't imagine anyone else doing
Chris Tucker in this.
He's awesome in this one. If you look online, there are people who genuinely hate him and are annoyed by him, and I could see where that could happen for you, and this is not your movie, but I love him, and I think...
I'll admit, by Rush Hour 2, I was pretty done. But in this movie, it just pops. It's green. It's super green. It's green crystal. Whatever is his sycophant, yes men, where he's like, Crystal, whatever green you want.
I'm going to say to the Razzies, you got this one wrong. I think Milla Jovovich is good. I think she's very funny, and she kicks butt, and I think she does this fun fish out of water and this transitioning. She goes through the most change of anybody in the movie in terms of her performance. So she leaves the movie a little bit too much in the back end for my liking, but she's great. Maybe this is just some of me sitting there going like, she's also a really pretty lady. So
she is very attractive.
They all these lines where they keep like going like, oh, she's perfect, or like the guy who reanimates her just like he's just like he can't even move. Everybody's always stunned by her, so not just anybody can do that, and she delivers. So
I do feel it's a little pretentious to assume that the universe's supreme being, perfect form, is human. I mean, these are aliens that brought them here, right? I don't know.
That's true. The diva just came out there and showed you squid people are pretty amazing.
You don't know what's behind that
armor,
the penguin armor. Presumably that evil wants to destroy Earth means it's some sort of seat of life. So even though they've progressed on to some sort of biomechanical armor around their corporeal form, doesn't
mean there's not a
basically human thing in there.
Maybe.
Because they reconstructed that giant robot glove
that's holding on to part of the case. So what they reconstruct
is a human. So I'm thinking that under all of that, in the end, is a human or humanoid in the first place.
Okay.
I mean, it's a little bit progressive for being a lady, because they did that like as the supreme being. It's a lady. And like Bruce was like, you noticed that, huh?
I will say, if I'm going to build biomechanical armor, I'm going to make sure I can run in it. After watching that Austin Powers scene at the beginning of the movie where the guy, the door's closing, and he's like, it's like the Austin Powers and the.
We made a mistake.
I know. Bad Monk's like kind of like, yeah, I know. Hurry.
Well, no, wait. I've got an answer for that too. Wherever their spaceships and their homeworld and whatever they're coming from, I'm sure there's nothing as archaic as a ancient Egyptian tomb door, messing with them. So,
yeah. I just cracked up when I was watching that. The door is closing so slowly, and he's moving even slower.
This goes to show you how deep the cast is, though, by the way. We all picked different ones, possibly just for the sake of variety, but I mean, they're all amazing. But none of us even mentioned Ian Holm.
Oh, yeah, he's great. Yeah.
As Cornelius, he's so good.
I almost wrote something extremely profane and negative from recast, like
Over My Cold Dead Body-esque.
But I picked one anyway.
Oh yeah, you got to play the game for sure. Hidden Gem, and I mentioned this before, there are amazing people who are no-name actors doing small little contributions to this movie that are very enjoyable, and tons of little details too, because it doesn't have to be a person. Chris, what's your hidden gem?
Well, I did take the cast thing literally. My hidden gem on this was actually we already talked about him a little bit, the Thai. I had to look up his name, but the guy who brings the noodles and the Chinese to your apartment.
Yes. Mr. Kim?
Is that his character's name?
Yeah, it's Kim Chan is the actor's name, but the character's name is Thai. Yeah, I had to look it up because, of course, I don't even think he's named in the movie, but
I don't think he is. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think they... If he does, it's quick.
I want to give a shout out to the voice of Corbin Dallas's mom.
So funny.
Yeah.
So funny. I even love it when they hand it to the president too. It's like,
I should never put. I could have just gotten.
I know you're not the president because you sound like you're an intelligent person, and that guy's an idiot. And the look that
On behalf of the...
she's great. Great voice work on that one. Brian, Hidden Gem. Is it floating Chinese food guy?
Nope, I'm going with Starship Captain number 2.
With Al Matthews from Aliens and Tomorrow Never Dies. I saw you in there. What's up, bud?
I'm going to go with Brian James as General Monroe. Maybe not that hidden, in fairness. But this guy's acting, physical acting, is really good. His facial reactions of, no, don't put me in the refrigerator. Like, what, there's not room for us.
We can't all fit.
And presumably he kills three members of like the military's upper echelon.
Yeah, are they dead?
Yeah, if you can get reconstituted from a hand, I'm sure they got this. But that's probably not cheap. But he just, froze.
He's definitely in the scenes later, too, because the president looks up. He's like, when he walks in, he's like, we're going to send somebody in to negotiate. Do you mind if I go in and negotiate? Yeah. And then he walks in without saying anything, just like, blast somebody in the head. And he's like, wonder where you learned to negotiate like that. And he looks back at him. He's like, eh. But everything this guy does is great. When he's sitting there in disbelief of Lilu becoming reanimated, and he sits there and goes like, I'm going to need some pictures.
For the archives.
For the archives.
For the archives.
I mean, pay attention to all the little things that this guy does. He's really funny and he's really good. He does a lot. So Brian James is my pick.
He's very rarely a good guy too. I'm not saying he's a good guy per se in this, but he's very often, the villain henchman something or other. And this is one of the chances he really had. Like, more than just that.
And he nailed it for me. So it's hard not to pick the guy who does a stick up for Bruce Willis at the beginning. That guy is hilarious too.
Yep.
Give me the cash.
Give me the cash.
Bud.
Do you like it?
The first several times I used to watch this, I didn't know what was on top of his head was a picture of the hallway. I just thought it was a very strange hat that he had. I thought this was an amazing piece of wardrobe, and I didn't give him enough credit. So he's a totally inept mugger, but at least he had a clever idea to get through the security camera. I'll give him that.
You've been waiting out there long?
I love how also when the gun's taken from him, he's like, nice hat. And he's like, thanks. And then he just starts to nervously dance for no reason, like in a little jig. I mean, ridiculous. So recast. As Brian said it's going to be hard.
This is miserable.
You can go deeper in the cast if you have to. Sometimes that's the coward's way out. And I'm known for
Yeah, see, I didn't want to go the coward's way out. I was like, you got to stick with one of the main people.
I didn't do it.
Yeah. So I did the atrocious thing and recast Lilu. I picked Anna Taylor-Joy just for or Anna Taylor-Joy for kind of like an alien look. She's got a very, supreme being elf kind of face.
Yeah, she has. She's interesting.
I think she was probably still sperm when this movie came out, though.
Well, yeah, I didn't know the rules here so much.
Not true, not too bright. She would have been 1 year old.
Oh, excuse me.
So
newly minted human. You can redact that, by the way.
you know. It's less offensive, I guess, if you sit there and say it's like, she's just ovary eggs.
No,
I'm gonna get you in trouble one of these days.
Oh, dude, you get us in trouble again.
Oh no, I feel like that too can be taken really wrong. Okay, please continue.
No, I struggled with this big time because I don't want to recast. I love the Zorg performance, right?
Okay.
Gary Oldman and Zorg. Bruce Willis is great. I struggled with maybe I could try to recast the priest, but I feel like that was too far down the cast.
Okay, well maybe I did. Maybe I did too far.
No, that's not. You're a bold decision maker, that Chris, because I think that's not. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with you could even recast like Tricky, the right arm guy, like the number 2 guy who's.
Oh well, I'll definitely take it easier way next time then. Yeah, I was like, I got to do a main character, otherwise I'm just copping out.
Not every movie deserves to run to the 10th build person to replace, but this one does. So, Brian, how about you? What would you do?
I recast David, Charlie Creed Miles' character, and I wanted somebody who can do that awkwardly befuddled thing, but can also, maybe be a little bit more recognizable. And I went with Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah, yeah.
I think at that point in his career, this wouldn't have been like a step down for him.
No.
Like he was still kind of made for TV kind of stuff.
Was he still awkward at this point?
Yeah. So I feel like this would have worked really well. And the fact, like him now, so much as an actor, that if he had also been in this, it would just like catapult him up higher.
He hadn't matured to the point where it's just like, oh, this guy's not a dorky dude anymore. Like, so yeah, okay. All right, well then I'm going to go with Tom Lister Jr. as the President Lindbergh. There's nothing wrong with what Tom Lister Jr. does. I enjoy his performance, but I kept thinking, what if Carl Weathers does it? And I think that he would be really fun to watch be the president in this one. And if you're wondering where he is in his career at this point, this is 1 year, right? This would be right after Happy Gilmore, where he plays Chubbs.
Excellent. Joseph Gordon-Levitt in 1997 did not have a movie. He was in between The Juror and Sweet Jane, neither of which I have ever heard of.
Yeah, so if nothing else, it would have been good for his career.
Yeah, this would have been a good... In fact, it's not Third Rock from the Sun from 90... Well, I guess he was in the middle of Third Rock right
makes
now.
Sense. Yeah, there you go.
So 96.
He didn't have any movies at the time, just TV.
Mm-hmm. By the way, casting Tom Lister Jr. as the president was progressive. Put a black guy in the role of president in 97. We didn't have to wait that long into the future, it turns out, but at the same time, he looks like he might have been a football player too while he was at it. So
you don't want you go with like a Terry Crews. You get the Idiocracy version of the president in there. Just really ham it up.
Terry Crews is another one of those guys for a tough guy who has good comedic sense.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will watch things because Terry Crews is in it.
Yeah. Chris, best shot.
The opening up the garage, like to that futuristic New York, where he gets in the taxi, right, and the garage door opens, and then sort of just this expansive shot of this futuristic New York that's bright and fun. That's probably my favorite one.
Like a real car guy. I like it.
Yeah, well, it's not the car. It's not just the car, right? It's the whole scene. But yeah.
And Brian, best shot.
This is going to sound really weird, but there's this point in the very beginning of the movie where we've already talked about it, where the alien is trying to make it to the door and ends up giving you away. But the shot that I really liked was, as the door closing, they just do this completely unnecessary shot of the coffee cup rattling next to it.
I just felt like that is the kind of like attention to detail sort of microcosm piece that made this movie great.
When those aliens are coming in the beginning, it is so good. Like the way the ship comes down, the steam comes out, like their spaceship's all wet and misty in the desert and stuff, and it's like you said, it's gritty.
And even the best part of the ship landing is Aziz light, and then they hit the giant floodlights, and he goes, "Oh, thank you, Aziz."
Yes, my best shot is going to be when Bruce Willis is watching the diva sing. There's this moment of like, I'm on a mission, but this is so powerful and so cool to watch that, he stands up with great enthusiasm. And so to do this, they shoot him at a low angle to make the room feel bigger in the moment. And it's just creative camera work to bring that amazing musical moment to life. Best scene, Chris.
Yeah, so I really like the scene. We, again, talked about it a little bit earlier where Zorg's choking and the priest sort of just right away, I mean, he taunts a little bit, but sticks to his principles of preserving life, right? Otherwise, the movie ends there to some extent, right? If he doesn't,
would have saved him a lot of trouble.
Yeah, sticks to his principles and saves his life. And then in return, in this optimistic future view of the world, the bad guy in return spares his life.
For now.
For now, but he doesn't. I mean, he doesn't actively try to kill him at any later point.
He sets a bomb on the boat that he's on.
He doesn't know that he's on that boat, though. He's not supposed to be there.
He's not supposed to be. That's true. He's in handcuffs for trying to get in there.
Yeah.
Best scene, Brian.
We've talked about it a couple times, but I just want to hammer this home. It's the juxtaposition between the opera scene and then the fight scene.
That's just one of the coolest parts of this movie.
No, it is very cool. I think there's some great camera work there too. That's where my best shot was, but also when Lilu's fighting, she does like this amazing somersault back, and then she kind of calls them on. I guess this is before the Matrix, kind of like how Neo like waves you on. I guess it's a bit of a Bruce Lee thing to do. That's a good shot too, as she's going her way back out of the room to reset for more fighting. Good camera work. It's a fun scene. My best scene is going to be this. It's set just after your scene, Brian. It's when Ruby and Corbin are blasting their way out of this situation. It starts off in a very funny way as Bruce Willis is trying to get the diva out, and Ruby's holding the gun on one of the Mangalars, and he ends up blasting him, and then that blows their cover.
Yeah.
And then from that point, it's a total shootout.
Sorry.
Yeah, you think you're gonna be okay? So, I love the scene where Corbin blasts Ruby through the floor as well.
With the body-shaped outline.
Yes, very Looney Tunes. I mentioned earlier how he's demanding, he's like, can you slide me the gun? And he just looks at him blankly. It's all very good stuff here. So I'm having a blast. And given that the scene that Fry mentioned is just prior to this is definitely my favorite part of the movie. So
Definitely.
best wardrobe or makeup moment, Chris?
So the wardrobe or the wardrobe, it was tough for me, but Ruby Rod's Rose's costume certainly was my favorite. It's, it's the leopard one with the crazy, tube hairs, close second, but
Right.
but I do like the
It's hotter than hot. It's hot.
yeah. I just like it. It was tough to decide between those two, and of course you got the thermal bandages, but I wasn't sure I could call that an outfit rather than it's just duct tape. So I don't know.
More on that in a few seconds. Brian, best wardrobe or makeup moment?
Yeah.
I am going to go with probably Pava Laguna on this. I think that if you can call the costuming or her what it was, it's easily the most unique looking thing in this film, and the film full of very unique looking things. So yeah, I'm with I'm going full squid.
All right. I'm going to go with the thermal bandages.
Yep. Somebody had to.
It's one of the sexiest pieces of wardrobe ever made. I mean, and she's got the orange hair to go with it. I mean, it's iconic.
It is iconic.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of this movie, don't tell me you don't think of that. I'm not saying that just because it's attractive. It is, but I mean, it's just very cool, very futuristic too. By the way, orange suspenders that she wears later, I don't know why that works for her so well, but it does.
I'm not even sure that those were supposed to be worn like that.
That's actually a thought I had whenever I was like, really? Is that?
Yeah. So even when she puts more clothes on later, which it's still like a skimpy midriff, so it's not that conservative either. But
God bless the 90s.
That is very 90s. Yeah, they don't do it that way anymore probably, but she made it work. She's tough. So there's something there for everybody. Change one thing. Chris.
Yeah, so I'm not sure at the end of the movie. I was kind of unclear, and I'm kind of a dunce when it comes to these things, and I'm just enjoying the show. But if at the end of the movie, the fifth element is supposed to be love rather than the supreme being, I'm not sure that the movie, and this might be a job of, because it was shortened from a trilogy, but there's not a lot of establishing of a relationship between Bruce Willis and Mila Jovovich. I probably just messed that up. I didn't get Russell's training. Jovovich. Of establishing a relationship that they love each other. They kind of literally just met, and then she disappears for a good while towards the end, right after the fight. So I don't know. I just would have found a different way to demonstrate an act of love at the end there, if that's what the message was supposed to be.
I think that they did a good job showing that he was clearly enamored with her.
Oh yeah.
But very little, like she was just like how people suck. Most of that movie.
She's a little bigger than just love, though, because Bassan was saying the fifth element to him is a representation of life, love, art, and all the beauty in the world, and that the fifth element is a symbol of life. So it's not exactly just love. Does that make it any better for you, Chris?
Well, it's not clear to me at the end exactly what we're going for here, because he says "I love you" and then suddenly there's beams shooting out of her mouth, right? So
that's what happens when you love somebody. Maybe you're not doing it right.
I guess not.
So, in fairness to your point, the movie gets real serious and it introduces concepts at the 95% mark of the movie
Yeah.
that you're not prepared to take on. I think that your comment there might be valid. I'm going to overlook it though. But yeah.
I didn't say I didn't like the movie. I just said it's just sort of jarring at the end of this fun romp that we take sort of this more serious
Sure.
note there at the end, and yeah.
Brian, change one thing.
I don't know if this also has to do with the fact that this should have been longer, but I would have liked at least a little bit better idea. Most of my understanding, or what I believe to be my understanding of how these beings came to be, was just guesswork. So it would have been nice to know, like, are these more evolved humans? You know, even if it was a, you know, galaxy far, far away, you know, scrolling text at the beginning, I just didn't feel like I ever really knew what was going on with the other beings that are protecting us.
Okay. I think you might like this next one, me, because this is going to connect a little bit to that. So my change one thing is the ship for, you know, the good aliens as they're re-entering our atmosphere. They're taken out by two little gunships, and they don't put up much of a fight. And if these beings are the protectors of life, shouldn't their ship have some more firepower on it? Like, we don't get a good space battle here.
It's a scathing indictment of the pacifists.
I guess, but I want a space battle. So I can't do it if I don't get what I want if I don't say this. So I want blasters and gunships and stuff fighting. And yeah, I want them to go down swinging.
I want to shoot somebody.
Somebody gets a lucky
Yeah.
Somebody gets a lucky shot down the exhaust vent, and then it all blows up,
Yep.
right?
It can only happen once. It could certainly not happen again in a sequel movie.
Yeah.
All right. Best quote, Chris.
For me, yeah, it's negative. I am a meat popsicle. It's just so far out of left field, and the cops just roll with it, right? It's just like, all right, are you human? Like, negative. I'm a meat popsicle. Like, what? This does feel like something a teenager would have written and thought it was absolutely hilarious. And so maybe that's, you know, it's just stayed in the script.
It's how he identifies.
Yeah.
There's still a 15-year-old Chris Shreve in you, just there somewhere, and that makes that 15-year-old Chris happy. So
yeah.
All right, Brian, best quote.
My favorite quote was ad-libbed by Willis. Lady, I only speak two languages, English and bad English. I've said that to people with no reference to this movie whatsoever, and just a smile in the back of my head.
I'm like, thanks, Bruce.
My best quote is a ensemble, or a duo quote, I should say, between David and Cornelius, as Lilu immediately starts just stripping down in their monastery, and they turn around embarrassed, and they go, "They really make her perfect."
Perfect.
I know. Their facial reactions with the line is just so good. And it's hard not to pick. Nobody picked Lilu Dallas Multipass.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the most iconic line from the film.
We've come full circle, and it's time to give this movie a rating on a 5-star scale. Half-star intervals. Chris, what do you give The Fifth Element?
For me, it's 4.5 stars. It's nearly perfect. It just kind of skips at the end there, right, as we were talking about. There's just a little bit of a tone shift and maybe sort of a rushed ending to it. But other than that, I just really love it.
All right, Brian, 5-star scale. What do you give him The Fifth Element?
One of the reasons I'm so frugal with my star ratings is so every once in a while I can just really truly nerd out on something that's fantastic. So I guess a 5-star, and anybody who wants to talk about it can find us on Facebook, Twitter, anywhere. So we'll have this discussion.
Well, Brian, if you want to fight somebody, you will have somebody right at your side, because I'm giving 1 star for every element of this movie. I'm giving it 5 stars. It is delightful. It is. I can't tell you how much of a better mood I am when I watch this movie. It is one of those things where I'm just sitting there going like, why didn't I listen to people who tried to tell me about this 5 years sooner? Like, I wish I could have had this movie in my life sooner, because I've loved it so much. So
I'm excited for Shreve. He got an extra 15 minutes he's never seen before this watch.
No.
I mean,
Yeah.
When I tell people at work about a book that I really think's gonna like change their world, and then they come back and they're like, "That's excellent," I always think, "Man, I wish I could be, I wish I could be in that position where I'm reading or seeing something for the first time." And dude, an extra 15 minutes of this movie, that's gold.
Yeah, Aziz Light. I saw the light of the movie.
Aziz.
We didn't mention that on quotes. I mean, I'll be honest with you, that's probably the one that I actually quote the most. Like, I don't know why, but for some reason, if I just have low light and I need some light, like if I'm working under a sink on some plumbing or something like that, it comes to my mind. Aziz, light. I don't even know anybody named Aziz. One day my son Grant's going to be doomed to have me say that to him, like as he's helping me hold a flashlight for something, like while working on a fuse box or something. I'll be like, Aziz, light. And he'll be like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you'll see.
I am going to be so terribly annoying to my daughter one day because she's going to have to watch like 500 movies to keep up with what I'm telling her.
You are a quote machine. There's a reason why we finish the shows the way we do with you, just handing obscure quotes away. This was tailor-made for you.
Yeah.
Jess gives like warnings to people we meet. She's like, half the things he says are movie quotes. You can just ignore that.
There was a funny stand-up comedian who said, I dated this one guy and he was just so funny. He would just say the funniest things that you just wouldn't imagine. But it just turned out I hadn't seen Anchorman yet.
Hey, apparently that was the 60% of the time that it worked every time. So.
All right. Brian, you want to help me pick a movie for next time?
Absolutely.
Robin Williams is one of my favorite actors, and let's look at some of the lighter, more fun sides of his performances here. So I've got three options for you. Option one, Jumanji from 1995. When two kids find and play a magical board game, they release a man trapped in it for decades and a host of dangers that can only be stopped by finishing the game. Option two, Hook from 1991. When Captain James Hook kidnaps his children, an adult Peter Pan must return to Neverland and reclaim his youthful spirit in order to challenge his old enemy. And in option three, Father's Day from 1997. A woman cons two old boyfriends into searching for her runaway son by convincing both of them that they are actually the boy's father. Brian, what'll it be?
I think we gotta go Hook, right?
Rufio.
Yeah.
Rufio.
Great choice. And we look forward to that next time. Man, we are hitting the Spielberg hard here in the early show history. I think he's easily been the director we've visited the most. So let's just keep going into Spielberg town. So, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show with us. This has been fun, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you, all the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. We invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. So subscribe, rate, and review to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe on our YouTube channel. Give us a like on Facebook, Instagram. Follow us on Twitter at @movie_retro, and email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. And providing and producing this podcast is fun but not free, so we invite you to support the show at our Patreon page, www.patreon.com/retromovieroundtable. All contributions are much appreciated and will go towards making the show better for you, the listeners. As always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Brian?
You got that right. See, according to Kato's plan, I'm the enemy because I like to think. I like to read. I'm into freedom of speech and freedom of choice. I'm the kind of guy who wants to sit in a greasy spoon and think, gee, should I have a T-bone steak or the jumbo rack of barbecue ribs with a side order of gravy fries? I want high cholesterol. I want to eat bacon, butter, and buckets of cheese, okay? I want to smoke a Cuban cigar the size of Cincinnati in the non-smoking section. I want to run through the streets naked, covered in green Jell-O, all over my body, reading Playboy magazine. Why? Because suddenly I might feel the urge to.